Hello everybody, welcome to yet another Aranet webinar. Good evening to those of you joining us from Europe, and good morning to our colleagues across the ocean. So, recently we've had quite a lot of these webinars actually. The last three were focused more on interviews with experts in the COVID case. But then we looked in our calendar and we realized that we haven't had for quite a while a news update of what has been, what has been going on with Aranet in terms of news over the past 5 months. And and also we'd like to look at the roadmap. So today, as always, the webinar will be hosted by me. My name is Rssi. I am the marketing director of Aranet. So yeah, today we have quite a big agenda planned ahead. And before we begin, I guess it makes sense to point out some things, because I believe that we have probably quite a diverse audience here in terms of some of you probably are already our partners and maybe already for a long time. Some of you are some new clients who are just getting acquainted with the Aranet system, and maybe some of you, this is the kind of first interaction that you actually have regarding Aranet and Aranet systems, and you really want to know what it is all about. Today we will be focusing more on what has been going on over the past 5 months and what we plan in the future. If you want either a refresher or you want to kind of look back and understand this the system itself, I would recommend these two videos. The links will be in the description of this webinar, so you can watch them afterwards. The one on the left is a short overview of the total Aranet ecosystem. It's just 1 minute long, but I think it really explains the whole system quite well on a basic level. If you want a more, let's say, deep dive into how the Aranet architecture works and what are the benefits of certain solutions, then actually the previous webinar, which I did 5 months ago, started off with this. So you can check that video out as well. That's the one on the right. But what have we planned for you for today? The agenda is, of course, quite long. We're gonna start off with probably the most interesting, the most popular, and the most, I would say, the most beloved sensor from our team, which is Aranet4, this lovely sensor that you see right in front of me. There's been a lot of developments with Aranet4 due to the fact of the COVID aerosol transmission route and how Aranet helps. Therefore, there's some news that I would like to share with you, so we'll start off with that. Of course, we will jump afterwards into other sensors, so we will look at what new sensors have been added to the Aranet portfolio, and we will look at what is in store for the future. So what do we plan on developing? We'll look at a little bit at the base station. So there's some new functionality which I would like to explain to you, and also we have some interesting plans for the future of Aranet base stations, so be sure to stick around until then. And of course, the final big block is the cloud. So those of you who follow our newsletter have probably already noticed that we have a new cloud version released, and we will look at also the cloud roadmap. And in the end, we will have a Q&A part. So, but before we continue, I like to talk about the Q&A a little bit, because we have this long agenda planned. Probably not all all questions can be answered. So that is why we have our forum, and all the questions that will be asked today will be afterwards available in our forum. So the people from tech support are kind enough, to note them down, and you will be able to see it there. And we really want to kind of revive the forum and add extra functionality on top of it. So it's worth, let's say, spending a little bit of time here, so to show what is new in the Aranet forum. So if we go to the address forum.aranet.com, let me just bring that into the screen. So what you see here, when you arrive, there's a login page, so you can either register, and I'll just log in. And there are three kind of major topics. So of course the most popular one is everything about Aranet4. There are some basic questions that are either asked by you or already repopulated with from our tech support. So if you're interested in some kind of thing that you can't find either in the software or on the Aranet4 itself, it's quite these explanations are quite nice here as well. And the same goes for the Aranet bases and sensors. But what is new, what you probably haven't seen before, is this Aranet Cloud section. So as the previous sections, also this one is kind of a Q&A, but it's also more than that. So our philosophy of building the Aranet Cloud is so to make it self-explanatory, so that we don't have to write long extensive manuals, and then you don't have to check things, learn how to operate it. It should be clear just by looking at it. But if there are some things that you're not quite sure how to do, this is what this section serves. So this is more of like a tutorial section. So for example, you want to do some specific things. So how to, I heard that you can add a background in the tile, but how exactly could you do that? And then you go to that section and you see that our tech support has done quite an extensive job of going through these things step by step with print screens and all of that. And there's and even some maybe functionality that typically you wouldn't maybe notice that it's there. It's all described, so it's like a manual. Well, it's like an explanation, like a tutorial, so look at it that way. So yeah, this is why I wanted to maybe spend an extra moment on this, because the forum, we expect to grow it in the near future and add new functionality, and hopefully it will really help you with your work as well. So, but that's enough about the forum. Let's return back to the presentation. So the first part is of course the Aranet4 news. So what's new with Aranet4? Well, as you probably already know, those of you who have bought the Aranet4 device during the last couple of months, the design of Aranet4 has significantly been improved. So one thing is that there are larger numbers on the screen, so which makes it easier to kind of read them from a distance. Also, if the top level threshold is breached, the alarm, there's not only the sound alarm and not only this red indicator, but also the color switch. So the numbers become white and the background becomes black. In the app, it is now possible to adjust CO2 thresholds. Beforehand, you had default thresholds, and that's, you know, what you got. But we had a lot of requests that, you know, in different countries there are different regulations, and we would want to adjust that. So this is what we made. And then in the design of the Aranet 4, you can actually see whether or not this CO threshold has been set in manually. So in this Aranet 4 that I have right here in my hand, you can see that there is no dot like the one on the presentation. That's because this one still has like the default settings. If you have your own thresholds adjusted, then that little dot will indicate that. And of course, larger color indicators, you know, to better show you whether or not the current reading is safe. Going further, there is a new app, a Aranet Display App, which is meant for displaying the actual CO2 value on a larger screen. You probably already noticed that large number over there. It shows 646 right now. So the air in our studio is near perfect, as it should be. So, but in a lot of countries, there already is regulation, or the regulation is in process to put in that in public places you will have to be able to show the actual CO2 reading on a larger screen, and this app permits it, right? So the way that this is currently configured is actually I have this tablet right here on my desk that has the Aranet4 Display App. It's connected to that Aranet 4 device, and it is showing the actual reading. And the good thing is that it doesn't go to sleep, so it just keeps on showing it. And what you can do if you want to even put it on an even bigger screen and put it in your restaurant or in your cafe is use screen mirroring functionality, and you know, mirror the same image on a larger screen. So that is quite a nice solution for public spaces like cafes, restaurants, bars, supermarkets, and places like that. So as I already said, I know that, for example, in Belgium, I think it was as of 9th of June, if you want to reopen your restaurant, this will be kind of mandatory to show it on the screen. But you'd say, well, that's all nice, but what if I don't have a screen, a larger screen to put it on, but I still, you know, I still want to tell my clients, tell my customers that it is safe to come inside and they can check for yourselves. Well, we have also a new solution regarding a QR code sticker, and this is a sticker that will quite soon come in any box of a new Aranet 4 device that is purchased. And the purpose here is to, you know, put it on the doors at the restaurant. And I'm gonna ask my colleague here to come and help me to demonstrate the main kind of functionality. But typically you would have this sticker somewhere. I'm just gonna put it on a table, and it has a QR code, and you would use your phone. I have an iPhone here that I'm not really proficient in using because I typically work with an Android phone. But anyway, so you would use the QR scanner that typically comes equipped, and it already tells you that you can download this app, this Aranet Display App right here. So it gives you some information and all of that. And here I will want to download it on the App Store. I already have it downloaded, so I can just open it from here, and I'm gonna allow it to use the Bluetooth. It's now scanning for nearby Aranet 4 sensors, I think we have quite a bit of sensors installed here. Yeah, so there are several. The one you see on the front is this one, so I'm going to select that, and let's go back to the view. It will refresh, and as now you can see, this is the same reading that you actually see on the big screen behind me, so 656. So this is a nice, easy alternative. So for anybody who wants to show that, you know, it's safe to come inside, you know, just scan the sticker and see the actual reading. Thanks a lot, Christian. That was helpful. So yeah, essentially a lot of new things with Aranet4 to make it easier to use, to make it, let's say, also, you know, to respect all of the safety requirements, because this QR code issue, or not issue, but QR code solution has become popular in a couple of markets, so we decided that we will make one ourselves as well. So that covers the news for Aranet4. Of course, if you have any questions, as I already mentioned, feel free to drop them in the comment section of YouTube. I'm not going to monitor it during my talk, but at the end of the of this session, of this presentation, there will be a Q&A session where I will answer a select number of questions, and then the rest will be answered in the forum. So let's go to other sensors. So what kind of new sensors has Aranet come up with? One new development in the in our portfolio is an Rssi sensor. So many of you probably know that beforehand we had this signal test sensor. Then in our previous news webinar, I showed you this ping pong kit, which was essentially two of these sensors that communicated with one another. This sensor is more like the previous signal test sensor, only it is in a better casing, so it's in the same standardized casing that most of Aranet sensors will be from now on. And it also has the measurement in dBms, so it actually measures, so what you see in the base station software is not like beforehand where it was temperature and then the sensor got lost. Now you just see the current dBm value. So this sensor is very useful if you already know where you want to install the base station, but you want to check out this kind of the radio parameters around it. So how far does the signal go, where to better put the sensors, etc. So a very useful tool in the toolbox of anybody who is installing Aranet systems on a regular basis. Let's look at the next one. So the hour meter. So this is something that has been requested for quite some time, and now it's finally released. So this is a device that measures operational time in seconds of any device connected to the power grid. So you can use this to monitor the time that your equipment is operational. So for example, one example where I've heard this being used is in poultry farms. So they can add this to their feeding devices, and using the calculation of the time that these devices are operational, they can calculate and they can understand how much feed do the chickens consume. And actually in that industry it's very important, because if you suddenly see that there is a drop in this feed consumption, you know that probably there is an illness that you have to kind of address. Let's see, next sensor, CO. So CO, as you probably know, is carbon monoxide, and it's a very dangerous gas if it accumulates in any enclosed environment. Typically, you would want to measure this anywhere where you have open flame heating, so either that's burning wood or burning like natural gas, which you still typically find in chicken coops. So you can use this sensor as an alarm mechanism to kind of see, yes, to get notifications when CO concentration levels become too high, and because it's an odorless gas that you can't otherwise feel, and it's very dangerous to be suffocated by it. So this is also a nice addition to the Aranet portfolio. We're still going on quite hard on developments on sensors specifically for the poultry and the livestock market. So one big problem that you have in livestock and poultry is that there is a lot of ammonia around, and ammonia is super corrosive to any kind of electronics. And when we first started to test our original sensors in chicken coops and in poultry farms, we realized that the electronics died after a couple of months, which led us to understand that a specific sensor for these environments should be created. So we made the ammonia resistant TRH probe. It's not only ammonia resistant, it is actually designed to operate in any other, well, not any of course, but in many other harsh environments. But ammonia is typically the one which is the most harshest for electronics. So now with this sensor, it's quite easy to measure temperature and relative humidity also in places where ammonia levels are high. And while we are on the subject of ammonia, of course, it is important to measure ammonia itself. So now we've had experiments before by making our own ammonia sensors, and we realized that this is actually not that easy task, because a lot of these sensor chip manufacturers are not really that good in measuring it. Typically the problem is that the sensor dies quite quickly and the measurements become very imprecise. So what we did for the time being is that we took the market leader in this segment, which is Dole, specifically Dole 53, which is, for anybody who is in the poultry business and livestock business, this is the the best of the best. So we took it and integrated it similarly as we did with the stem diameter sensor. So as a consequence, this sensor has to be still powered, right? So the Aranet sensor itself can't power it. It can only make it wireless, so it can only make this communication part wireless, but still that is a good step forward. So that covers more or less what new sensors have been introduced during the 5 months. Let's take a look what is in store for the future. So the sensor roadmap. Next sensor on the line is this infrared temperature sensor, and this is something very horticulture specific. This sensor uses infrared technology to measure surface temperature, and it is designed for plant leaf temperature measurement. And it is necessary in horticulture to essentially calculate the vapor pressure deficit. So that means how much, if I'm not mistaken, how much vapor can can still go out, so to say, in the greenhouse. So that is, if you're a farmer or if you are an agronomist, that is a very important metric for you. And to calculate it, you need to know the surface temperature of the leaf. And we expect to release the sensor. It will be available on August this year. So another thing in our roadmap is, as some of you know, we've been looking for different solutions to kind of estimate the remainder of feed in, for example, chicken feeding towers. And one way that we did it beforehand is with ultrasonic level sensors. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but another solution is to just weigh the whole thing. So that's why we will be introducing a load cell, but this specific load cell, you know, our current weight sensors go up to about 100 kilograms. This will be designed to go up to around 5 tons. So this is let's say a whole different scale of weight. So that we expect to have a first prototype by August, but by that I mean actually a first prototype, because this is a new direction for us. We don't know, you know, how they will perform in real life. So we're gonna have a first prototype in August 2021, and we're gonna start, you know, real field tests. And depending on how that goes, we will, then we will be able to estimate when the actual release of the sensor comes. Next kind of sensor in our roadmap is an ultrasonic distance sensor, but a better version of the ultrasonic distance sensor. We've heard quite a few complaints from our customers that you know, the current there's very limited surfaces for which the current ultrasonic sensor operates correctly. And once you start to have some kind of topology or some kind of graininess, or the surface is not smooth, so it's not water, it starts to behave weirdly. It doesn't give correct measurements. So that's why we are improving it, and the new version of the sensor will support a broader range of surfaces, so you will be actually able to use it in places where you couldn't use the previous one. And this one we expect to release next month, so quite soon. As a next point, which is also something quite interesting, as already shown in previous slides, we have this dual sensor that is connected to the Aranet transmitter with different power supply. Similarly, we did that with the stem diameter sensor, but that is all quite messy, and then it doesn't also make sense if you have like a sensor that needs a power supply, which is this dual sensor, for example, but then you need additional batteries for the 420 or the voltage sensor, Aranet sensor. And we of course recognize that that's not the best kind of solution. So we are building an analog transmitter with a built-in power supply. So all you'll have to do is connect your sensor to that and connect it to the mains, and you won't have to worry about, you know, changing the batteries, because as the third-party sensor, this will power from the main grid as well. And we expect to have it done and released by October this year. Another interesting development that we are working on in the background, as I said, we've had you know, bad experience with these previous NH3 sensor manufacturers, so we went with Dole, but we are now working also with another company which we are investigating, and if this turns out to work properly, we will actually have a ammonia sensor that can be powered from Aranet itself, so it can be battery powered, so you won't need a power supply. But there is still a lot of unknowns regarding this sensor, so we expect the release of such sensor no sooner than in December 2021. We are also looking at a new air quality sensor, and if we want to go into that air quality field, you know, CO2 might not be enough. So what we will also have in the near future is a sensor that has particulate matter measurements possible, and I mean PM10, so that is particulate matter which is lower, smaller than 10 microns, and perhaps we're also looking into having in that same sensor also PM2.5 and PM1, which is particulate matter that's smaller than 2.5 microns and smaller than 1 micron. And also we are investigating the possibility of adding VOC measurements, so that's volatile organic compounds. But there are still also there are a lot of unknowns. We expect to have it in a similar form factor as Aranet4, maybe with or maybe without a screen. That is to be determined. Unfortunately, these kind of measurements are very power inefficient, so it will require a power supply. And as this is a sensor that essentially measures dust, then it has to allow dust to come in. So logically, the best ingress protection class that it can have is IP42. And for this sensor, we expect to have a first prototype in December 2021. And here I really want to stress that this is just, you know, the first prototype. We still don't know where this will take us and how the end product will look. But we know that, you know, the indoor air quality market is somewhere where we want to focus on in the future. And to kind of have this this full offering for the indoor air quality market, what we need are these extra measurements. So to have the full scope. CO2 is nice, and I would argue that CO2 is the most important of them all, because CO2 can be used as a proxy. So for example, if you have good enough ventilation and your CO2 levels are down, so CO2 is ventilated out of the buildings, typically VOC and particulate matter is also taken care of. But in some applications or somewhere where you want to understand, you know, these things more precisely, it makes sense to also measure all of these other metrics. So that's it for the sensors themselves. Hopefully you have a lot of questions and you're writing them in the YouTube comment section. It's currently not visible for me, so I'll be able to check it only later at the end of the presentation. But let's move on to the base station news. So regarding the base station, there are a couple of news. For those who have followed our newsletter, you've probably seen firmware releases. The latest one has been version 2.6.5. I'm not yet sure, either today or tomorrow a mail will go out and it will be publicly also available or on our website. What has happened there is the menu structure even though, you know, one of our core kind of values is making these things simple, and we typically say that, you know, Aranet is so simple that your mother-in-law could set it up. We've even gone further, and we've even simplified the menu structure even more so. So I really invite, if you do have an Aranet Pro base station, please update to the newest yourself. There are a lot of improvements in the MQTT protocol. This is used for integrations, so it's let's say very technically detailed, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details here. We will have links in this video description with more information, and that is of course also available on our website. Some minor you know, additions: the fact that the product number is also shown in the sensor card. For the Russian region now, it is possible to have 1 minute transmission interval. Beforehand in Russia, the smallest you can have was 2 minutes. And of course there are some improvements in cloud upload and stability. So, but what is in store for the future of the base station? Let's look at the roadmap. So our main priorities when we are looking at, you know, next steps for the base station is to further these base cloud stability improvements, because we are ever growing, and of course, as with all new technologies, there will be some issues, so we are aware of them, and we are working really hard to kind of improve this stability of communication between the base station and the cloud. So another kind of nice feature what you'll have will be something that we call a semi-automatic firmware upgrade, which will be available by December. I think I've gotten the dates wrong here. It should be 2021, but anyway, it's by December 2021 you will the base station will be able to kind of upgrade itself. Semi-automatic is because you will still have to kind of initiate it so that it doesn't do anything without your permission, but you won't have to do the whole row of steps that were before, where you had to go to our web page, you had to download this new firmware file and put it in the base station. Now the base station will be able to look on the web for itself. Then something that a lot of our bigger clients are quite often requesting, and these are people and companies that tend to install a lot of sensors, and if you have to like install 100 sensors in a supermarket, or you have to pair, you know, large amounts of sensors, it becomes quite tedious, quite fast, and we have heard you. So in September this year there will be this functionality available where you can do batch pairing, so pair a batch of sensors all together, as well as, you know, changing some configurations also in batches, so you don't have to do it one by one. Also, in kind of this near future roadmap, we expect in October to have specific frequency ranges available for Asian countries where we did not have them before. So in Asia, the frequency regulation is quite difficult, and in nearby regions it is, let's say, it changes, so we need to adapt the software. But there in the colored schemes, you now can see that soon in October, Aranet sensors will be legal to use in many Asian countries as well. Going further, there is a whole new base station in the works actually. It's called Aranet Mark III. Now you might be wondering, so we have Aranet Pro, what happened to Aranet Mark II? And why is this Mark III? Well, actually we had a Mark II project, but eventually we understood that we had put too many features in it whilst making it, and the price tag for it did not make sense, having so many things in there. So we kind of scratched that project and it was abandoned. So but there are some kind of functionalities that the current base station, I mean hardware wise, lacks. That's why we are working on a more kind of industrial grade base station. So it's going to be a full outdoor base station, which comes together with the possibility of a larger temperature range operation. So from -40 to +85 degrees Celsius. It will be, of course, IP68, so high protection class. It will be powered over Ethernet, so it will have only a power over Ethernet jack. It will have this nice feature which is called a hardware watchdog, which means there will be a separate piece of software continuously monitoring whether or not the base station has gone down for some reason, and it will restart it itself. Also, a GSM modem will be available, so you will be able to put a SIM card there for both SMS notifications and for data upload to the cloud. So this can be put somewhere, where you just need, power, and you don't even need a internet connection. All you need this 4G or 3G SIM card. And here we expect to have a first prototype in February next year. But again, that is only the first prototype because this is a very large scale project. We don't know what kind of directions it will take, and there might be a lot of bumps in the road, so of course it's not gonna be too soon. But then again, February is not that far away, so probably over the next year you will see a new industrial grade base station added to the Aranet portfolio. So that covers everything that relates to the base station. Our final part in news and in the roadmap is everything that concerns the Aranet Cloud. And here I will try not only to show it as a presentation, but also do a small demo. So we've had recently a new version release for the cloud. We called it the spring release. It was released in the end of May. So let's look at some of the things that have appeared in cloud since May. So we have a whole new section called alarms. So let's go to the cloud and take a look at how it looks. I have to find the correct screen. Yes, so this is my cloud account, my regular cloud account, and now you can see a whole alarms kind of window. Here you see, active alarms, where I have only one active alarm, which is low battery for a couple of sensors, but I can add, extra rules on top. For example, here I have something to do, with COVID safety, so CO2 levels, temperatures. Let's try to add a new rule. Let's call it I want an alarm when it says that the temperature is not optimal, so I'll call it optimal temperature. We'll choose the metric that will be temperature. And now you can select sensors. Which ones do you want to attach this alarm to? You can go, by pick, which means you go one by one, which is fine if you don't have a lot of sensors, but here I have like 134 sensors, so that's not that efficient. If you've done a good job beforehand and you've tagged the sensors, you can also select specific sensor tags. But what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to say that I want this alarm for all sensors. So it's going to get applied to all sensors. So, and here, the nice thing about this alarm is that it is actually 2-level alarm. So that means you get a first kind of escalation, which is just a warning. So it's it's getting a bit hot. You should do something. And then the second type, the second level, is critical, which is a higher level escalation. So let's put in examples. So if it's too hot, let's say 22 degrees Celsius, maybe we want to get a warning at around 20 degrees. Then let's say the bottom level is 10 degrees, and it gets really freezing at 5 degrees. So we set this alarm, and you probably saw this part getting populated regarding this delay time, and this essentially tells you how many after how many measurements that fall above or below the set threshold should this sensor send out an alarm. Sorry, not measurements, but how many minutes. For turning on the alarm, the minimum value is 5, because this is done so that you don't get like millions of alarms, pointlessly. And it also, of course, it takes time for the information to synchronize with the cloud. Anyway, it takes 2 or 3 minutes, but the alarm counts from the time when the sensor has done the actual measurement. So let's change these to 5, all here. This one also, not 35 but 5, and here as well. And the off is just after how long should the alarm be turned off. So we click create, and a new rule has been established. It even has this little new kind of icon there to tell you that this is the new one that has been made. It will not probably appear on the active list yet, because as I said, it will take even if some measurements are above the set thresholds, it will only start to initiate the alarm after 5 minutes. What you can also do in this kind of alarm pane is to check out the history of what has happened before. So this is a nice kind of a timeline of everything that has been going on. So if something has gone wrong, you're interested in seeing, okay, at what time what happened, and here you see it's like very nicely linearly one by one after another, and you can investigate what were the problems, what happened. And this essentially becomes quite useful fast. And if we go back to the presentation, this brings me back to the point that I made in the beginning regarding the forum. So for example, I just show you this functionality of how to set an alarm, but of course maybe you will either not remember it, or at the point when you need to set the alarm yourself, you're gonna think, okay, how did I have to do it, what was it, or you get lost somewhere. And that's why we have this forum again, and here's just a link to the specific article which explains even in more depth than I just did with about all of the functionality that is available in the alarm section. So it's all nice with screenshots here. You know, you get all of the information. Some things that I didn't cover of these explanation icons where you can hover over and it tells you, it explains you a bit more in detail what that function does. You know, to resetting the delay time and all of these things. So this is why we hope that the forum will be quite useful for you to kind of understand also this functionality, and also kind of if you forget something, it's easy to look it up. So going back to what else is new in the cloud. There are some kind of, let's say, cosmetic fixes. Now the measurement number color changes according to the alarm condition, and that is both visible in the tiles and in the sensor table. So let me just show you on the real system how that looks. So if I go back to the cloud, if I look at my dashboard, I can see that, for example, over here, you know, there is some temperature that has gone over the critical threshold, so it's red. There is some CO2 value that has gone over the warning threshold, but it hasn't yet hit the critical threshold, so it's yellow. Also, if you look at the sensor table itself, you see the same things here in the table itself. So here are the ones that have gone over the warning, and in the red you see the ones that have gone over the critical levels. Looking back at the presentation, what else is new? Battery alarms. So battery alarms have been added to the sensor list. Here you can, for example, see, you know, that this sensor, please replace the battery because the battery is only 2% left. So, you know, if you don't want to lose any data in between, that would be a good time to go and replace the battery. If you see the red one, unfortunately the battery is already dead, so it's 0%. So that's also quite useful to see kind of a summary of whether or not you need to think about buying and changing a couple of batteries. Visual indications of missed measurements. So beforehand there was this problem that was also put, let's say, in our attention by our clients, and we understood that ourselves as well, that beforehand, if you know, if you had like a sensor measuring, for example, temperature, and it, you know, measured 20 degrees, but then for some reason the signal stopped coming, so it missed one signal, it missed another signal, it missed the third signal. It just kept showing the previous measurement, so it just kept showing those 20 degrees, and you had actually no way of telling just by visually looking at the dashboard that actually maybe something has gone wrong. Maybe somebody, you know, took the sensor and walked away and it's not receiving measurements anymore. So now that's fixed. So now it is such that if a sensor does not receive a measurement for 3 consecutive intervals, it becomes a little less bright, as you see here. And once it does not receive measurements for more than 5 intervals, it does not even show the measurement anymore. It's just, you know, lines there. I can show you here as an example. There are lines here also in this in this sensor table, but also in the dashboard here I can see that if I look at the test and measurement training, I see that, oh, there's no values. I look at it, I check the data, and I see that the last measurement was received 8 months ago. So either somebody has walked away with the sensor or the battery has died, but in any case I have to fix the problem. Broken dashboard indications, or otherwise called as oops, that just it's a nicer visual indication that, for example, some dashboard has been configured improperly, or a sensor is missing from a dashboard that did exist. I can just quickly show how you can get one of those on purpose as well. So for example, you have, if I make a sensor widget, but then I don't choose any of these sensors or particular metrics, and I just go okay, and then it says whoops, there's a problem. So you have to check the configuration or delete it. And if we are talking about deletion, that is another kind of small but useful update in the cloud environment, where you can remove unused sensors from the user interface. So the way that you would do that is you would just go to the sensor list, and you would choose a sensor you would like to delete. You'd go to the configuration and delete sensor. It asks you if you really want to do it, and you say yeah, and the sensor is deleted, but you still can restore it even afterwards. That covers all of the new features that have been added. There is one thing that has been omitted or discontinued. As you know, beforehand we had this medical sensor project that in the end didn't turn out successful, and you have to be honest with yourself that not all ideas are meant to succeed. So we have made the decision to discontinue the sensor, both the sensor and the medical sensor widget. So you will no longer have access to that widget because it is no longer there. So I know that we are over time already. So the last thing that's been left in the agenda is actually the cloud roadmap. I understand if you've planned, if you've planned some things, if you have some things planned and you have only 1 hour reserved for this, that's fine. But I would really suggest for you to stick around, because there are only 3 things that I really want to that I'm quite excited to tell you about, which will arrive at the Aranet Cloud quite soon. So stick around for that. So the next part is the Aranet Cloud roadmap. So first thing, well, we were talking about alarms beforehand, but then I know that probably already some of you have asked, okay, so I see that alarm, but do I really get a notification? And of course that is important, and that's why we have that in our roadmap. Notifications regarding alarms will be available in August this year. So that is a natural, of course, next step for alarms. So initially the first ones will be email notifications, and then we'll think about whether or not it makes sense to have notifications in any other way. Then there is a kind of new object planned in the cloud, which is assets. So an asset is like an object where you've connected maybe several sensors. In this example, this is this tomato plant to the left. So you have several sensors on top, and you're not maybe interested in, sensor number 3, what is the temperature, but you want to, kind of understand the current state of the whole plant. So this plant becomes an asset, and then it kind of allows you to better kind of group these things together. You can see, you know, the average temperature of the plant, get all this information, and on the right you see a screenshot of a, you know, potential configuration. So you have one asset which is a bedroom, then another asset is a garden, another one is a living room, an office, and all of that is kind of separated in these kind of blocks. So both of these things will be available in August 2021. And the last thing for the cloud roadmap and for the presentation today, and the one that I guess I'm most excited about, is virtual sensors. And why am I most excited about virtual sensors? And they will be available very soon, already July 2021. So what are virtual sensors? Virtual sensors are essentially mathematical operations that you can do on your existing sensors, and then the result will be displayed as a separate sensor. So this is kind of a turning point for a cloud, because up until this point, you know, we were really, you know, from the get-go, we are really, you know, hardware guys, and we had made a really good base station and sensors, and made the network well, and you get all of this local storage and local kind of software in the base station, but then we realized the market necessity for a cloud, so we started to build a cloud solution. And up until this point, the cloud has functioned only as, well, both a data aggregator for kind of several base stations to get all of the data in one place, and of course, you know, for external access. But this virtual sensor functionality is something that actually changes the cloud, makes it into an analytics tool. And what do I mean by that? So for example, here on the left you see a little bit of an illustrative example. For example, you have several, you know, CO2 sensors, and you want to get the average CO2 value in your house. And then you can configure a virtual sensor that does that average. So now I will show you a kind of this virtual sensor functionality in the test environment. This is not yet available yet, but just to kind of give you a sneak peek. So let me switch now to the test environment. So if in the next month you will see that in your cloud dashboard you will have something like virtual sensors, and you would go to a sensor kind of this tab, and it does look like all of the regular sensors, but some of them have these little kind of triangles, and these are the virtual sensors. So you can configure a virtual sensor by going here. I have a couple of them configured, and here you can add a new one, right? So currently there are like 5 functions available for these virtual sensors. So you can either put an offset or a sum, an average, or an kind of expert function, which is a bit more advanced. So an offset could be used for some calibration, a sum can be used for, you know, summing several weights together to get, you know, the total weight of something that you actually want to measure. But let's try to build a sensor that calculates average. Let's call it temperature average. The input metric will be temperature. Here you can choose the sensors which you want to use for the calculations. So for example, I want to, well, just as a demonstration, I want to measure, you know, I want to calculate the average temperature between, you know, my sauna, garden, and fridge. This is of course not a real example, but for demonstration purposes, this is what is on that base station. So I click accept and create. So it makes that temperature average sensor, and also shows that it is new over here, and it will appear here together with these other measurements. You might be wondering, well, why is there no value here? Well, the virtual sensor works in such a way that it will provide the value once at least one value from each of the sensors that is calculating this function from has appeared. So to actually get this average, you actually have to wait until all of the sensors that have made from which you want to calculate this average have sent in that value. But from then on, it operates as, you know, a normal sensor. So we can take a look here at, for example, the average outdoor temperature. You know, it calculates it as a 20.6. You can see all of these trend lines. So essentially, it acts as a normal sensor, and you can even make virtual sensors with inputs from other virtual sensors, so you can stack them on top of each other and make quite complex mathematical formulas. And this is, you know, something really exciting, something that a lot of our customers have been asking, and with this the cloud actually becomes as an analytics tool. So for all of you who have been watching so far, thank you. Let's go and look at some of the questions that you've had. I know it's already 10:06, so we're not gonna spend too much time on that. So let me just check some of what the YouTube commentators have written here. Let me see. So not that many questions actually. Hopefully there will be more of them in the forum afterwards. So somebody is asking, can you link multiple Aranet4s in the app? And I see that Zigmars has actually raised before me and say that, yeah, indeed you can do unlimited sensors in the Aranet app. So there are a couple of questions regarding the app for the smart TV. For that, not yet, maybe in the future. And there's a question regarding batch configuration, so maybe I have to elaborate on that a bit more. A batch in this case is, for example, you want to pair 20 sensors in a row so that you don't have to click each of these sensors one by one. You just initiate this pairing procedure in the Aranet Sensor Hub software, and then just start putting batteries in one by one, and they will all get paired. So that's what essentially I mean by batch. Next question also is whether or not Aranet MK3 is still with omnidirectional antenna. As far as I know, it will be with an omnidirectional antenna, but this is one of those questions that I might not be qualified enough to answer, and this is a good one for the forum. As well as regarding how many sensors that will it allow, that is not yet determined. So thank you for asking these questions, and I guess these are all things that can be answered in the forum as well. Nevertheless, even though that I guess everything was quite clear, if you get later an idea of a question of something that you want to ask, please don't hesitate to go to the Aranet forum and ask the question there, so that everybody in the Aranet community can also benefit from that, and we really want to grow this as a community. But other than that, I know that it is already 15 past 6 o'clock, so for some people it is already the end of the workday. It has been a long week. Tomorrow it is Friday, so and then everybody can relax. But for our American colleagues, there's a whole day ahead for you, so good luck with that. And thank you everybody for listening. It has been a real pleasure to introduce you with the Rnet news, and I really think I really hope that you found this helpful. So until next time, goodbye.